And good evening, indeed. Here we are live. Where are we? 4 minutes past. We're only 20 minutes late. 4 minutes past. Technical issues. You can blame me. Needed the shower, putting the makeup on, and all the rest of it. This evening, got some extremely special guests for you. We've got Stu, my other admin on the Telegram page, and we've also got Magic Trades. Gentlemen, how are we? Are we well? Let's start with you, Stu. I I need to ask because I appreciate there's a few things we need to get through first, and people are hanging on the edge of their seats. But um, when it comes to things falling, how did you do on London Bridge? Oh, good stuff. And how about you, Magic? I think it's been a whole quarter since we saw you. You've been very busy with your PhD work. How's that all going? That's good. Have you got much time left? Oh, really? Wow. Absolutely. Okay, so we've got a little bit of time. Oh, that's not fun, is it? Oh, we can't hear Stu. Huh. Okay. Well, you can hear me. Da, 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 da. Let's try that one. There's no audio on that side. It's just it's every time, every damn time. Oh, well, I'm sorry, everybody, that you can only hear me. It's because the last time we were on here, it was just me, wasn't it? So, no doubt I've changed my settings and I've not been back since. I mean, this is the only time we go live. Maybe we need to go live more often. If we go live more often, then maybe that would help. No, I don't have anything there. So, how did we do that last time? How do we do it? Does anybody remember? Zoom call. Oh, let's try that one. Bosh. Ah, I remember now. Right, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to. It's amateur hour every time. We've got hundreds of people watching, thousands of people watching. I just need to remember my microphone's live so at least they can hear me and understand what's going on. So I'm just resizing the screen so that we cut out our Zoom stuff, pull the boys back in, do that, and then what should happen is if I transition it over, hopefully, if one of you is to speak now, please. Anyone? Hello? No, it still didn't work. No, it's my sound that's broken. I don't remember how I did it last time. Maybe I'll try that one. No, because that's the camera. See, they're both audio cameras. Why? It's really infuriating because this is such a. Yeah, we can all hear each other, but what's happening is the OBS studio is not picking up. The OBS camera is not picking up the audio from Zoom. Or maybe I need to hang on. Oh, gentlemen, say hello. Okay, well, we've got your audio now. You can forget being on video, though. Well, the videos, the sound is live at least, so that's a start in the right direction. So, can someone please confirm that they can hear you? Anyone? We'll get 100 messages flash up now. Huh. That's all right. Oh, for goodness sakes.
I hear something, no magical stew, just BR and echo. Why would we have an echo? Does that appear? Have we got the Zoom still open?
No.
I might. Let me make sure. Where's that bastard? Telegram.
Right. You should now be...
Testing.
Please work.
Testing.
It is now...
Hello.
I really hope this works.
That should be working now. I don't. If that's not working, that's not me. Turn your volume up, because that on my end is working.
Okay, so let's see if anyone says they can hear us. They'd be shouting if they could hear us. I don't think they can. Let me make sure.
It takes a little while for it to float through.
Volume.
Anyway, listen. Well, I need to make sure people can hear me at least first. I need a drink. It's enough to turn anyone to beer.
I've already had a few this evening at the pub, so I'm well ahead.
Crazy. Anyway, while we're here, I don't know if people can hear you. That's the problem.
No, I don't think they can. Testing. Can we use another streaming service? I'm not. I don't know how any of this stuff works. Oh, it's working now. Hold on, we just got something from Toddy saying working now. Okay, we can hear now. Great.
Wow.
Great.
Right.
Okay.
So let's just cut to the chase.
Oh, everyone's going yes.
Hey.
Good evening, everybody.
Victory!
We're over half an hour late. Fortunately, it's now 23:24, and it looks like I've lost my Freddos. So that means we've still got time. So let's cut to the chase. The bit you've been waiting for.
It's out. It's just been released.
Well, yeah, that's the way you load it up.
Results.
Oh, that means I won at 23:24.
It's just been released.
Listen, you get it refreshed. You start
Bottle. You may have just got it. I can't. It's error not found. We've crashed the site. But I saw it. I saw it come
If
out.
you two just wait a second, let me just give this exclusive news. So, I have seen the latest Bloomberg terminal, and I am pleased. I'm pleased. I'm pleased to see it. Pleased to announce.
Yeah, we're pleased.
That GGPHelp has actually increased his holding to 10 million shares. Now, I appreciate some might say, well, what's that got to do with anything? He's just the ex-director. Yeah, this is the guy that knew what was going on, has, for whatever reason, changed his shareholding and now increased his shares. If you're increasing your shares, that shows you've got commitment to the company, and that shows that you believe in the project still. Stu, I mean, you were super excited when you heard that. I mean, you've seen the blue.
Look, I've been in the share for a donkey's age, and I'm a significant shareholder now of these years. And there's only one thing that's bothered me for the last little while, and it's been GH, what I thought until now was selling completely down, walking away. It just didn't make sense to totally walk away. And when I spoke to my dad and my other trusted, friends about this sort of stuff, it became clear. I said to my dad, I said, if it goes below 10 million, I am actually going to start to worry. And I was, totally expecting the next print to have him out. To see him take another 4.5 million back up to 10 just makes me think he's a shrewd bastard, and I'm still pissed off with him. But I think it's fantastic. I think it's great for sentiment. I think it's big. I do think it's big. It means he's here. It answers the question for us. He's taken the lifestyle money, which was more than enough if you work out what he sold versus the 10 million left now. And now he just gets to sit with 10 million shares, which I'm sure he knows will be probably £1 and more one day, which is, hey, let me leave 10 million out there for doing nothing and take, many millions now at any range between 18 and 24. That makes a lot more sense to me. I still can't see this report. I'm refreshing it. It's just crashed.
Standard for
Standard.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to post it in Telegram if you've been able to access the reports?
Magic, have you got anything to say to that at all?
Well, I mean, I only found out about it a short while before this because I was out and I didn't see it. But I mean, it's very encouraging because ultimately this is the guy that brought Havieron to the table. So ultimately he is very, very in the know with regards to the system and what the sort of drilling they were putting out. And I wouldn't be surprised if he still has got contacts with people at the company, that he has probably, got knowledge that potentially other people do not. So, look, I mean, when he was selling, I thought similar to Stu that it was because he was kind of done with it and was probably moving on, a lot of the times, certainly in my short experience with the markets, big whales, as they call it in crypto land, but big banks, they like to manipulate things.
Tony's buffering very badly, and we can't be watched. Do you have any different internet connection?
This is it.
I'm just gonna have to deal with it.
The other thing we do is turn
I mean, ultimately, like when people manipulate the price, they it certainly happens with big banks and big institutions where they drive prices down so they can get cheaper shares.
Chat's posted the report, guys.
Oh, have they? Okay.
Yeah. Well, I've got a PDF. I'm assuming that's what it is.
So yeah, I mean, I don't really see. It's on the website now. I've managed to get it.
There we go.
Ultimately, I don't really see a negative to that. So very, very happy is the bottom line with that news. What I'm hoping for now is when I open this bloody PDF, when it loads, I want to see drill holes here. I want to see quantity.
How many?
Okay, so here we go, boys. Let's have a look. Exploration report, 9th September 2021.
Or are these into?
So highlights is red, Chris. Then we got down to Havieron.
Oh boy.
Havieron continues to growth drilling continues to outline high-grade mineralization outside the inferred mineral resource estimate. Had 133W1 located in the southeast crescent has returned 133 at 7. Oh my goodness. Not much copper, but wow, 133 at 7 from, okay, that's deep, including 1509. Okay, I'm smiling, 250 meters below the initial resource. So again, it's this whole area underneath that they're going for high-grade zones in the northern breccia and northwest of the initial inferred mineral resource estimate were confirmed. Had 129 meters at 9.7, 800. Oh, these are fantastic.
These are big numbers.
Yeah,
the 133 at 7 is just massive.
It is.
The copper is low. What I'm starting to see, in obviously there are some anomalous results with some of the drill holes, but even in the last set, you see the copper. It does seem to be a little bit zoned in the sense that it seems to be more prominent higher up in the stratigraphy. Or at least in the drill holes, than it is at depth. But the gold is consistent. In some cases, it looks like it gets higher towards with depth, which ultimately is excellent for when you're actually extracting a resource, right? So
Bottle, you read Sandeep's comments. They always
I
sound better
will
in
do.
your voice.
I'm still waiting for it to load up. So it's coming though. Obviously I can.
I'll wait for you because I just want to skim down to
Yeah.
how many holes we've got. I only see 4 on here. Is it me or okay? But someone's just posted in the chat 1, 2. Oh, I can't quite see there.
Got some new figures.
133 at 7, 23 at 5.
We've got some new drawings. Oh, look at the eastern outside. Whoa! I'm going down to the pictures. There's outside of the eastern breccia, to the north of the eastern breccia. One has hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Holy shit!
Yeah.
Figure 6, gentlemen. Figure 6.
Right. On page?
Oh, I don't know. Keep scrolling. Just keep scrolling. Just keep scrolling.
Oh, there we are. Oh, hello. Oh, look at those 3 drills through the eastern breccia.
Which cut straight to it. I'm very quiet.
I mean, wow.
I wonder why. Let me turn up a little bit.
And then you've got that deep target. Does that? I mean, this is my very amateur brain, but Magic, does that almost look the southeast crescent deeps target? Does it almost look like that could be the source where it's just coming up and then sort of curving around?
Yeah, it's difficult to say. This is a 2D view. There is a couple of theories floating around in that either that one or the idea that the eastern breccia is kind of more towards the source and it's actually feeding a lot of the other breccias. It's hard to really say, but it's very good that they've managed. This is what I wanted out of this. I wanted to see drilling and I wanted to see intercepts within these targets, because ultimately this is what's going to improve our...
Guys, let's try go audio only, because apparently the buffering makes it unwatchable, according to the chat.
Okay. Well, I can... okay. Yeah, do you want to turn your cameras off?
Oh, by the way, they've still got assays pending.
Yay.
So when you get down to page 23, you're going to see a big table with the drill hole data.
There. It's 130.
And they've got multiple holes with assays pending.
So how do I... All right, I've turned my camera off.
I can turn mine off if needs. Let me just turn mine off.
I'm not sure it'll help. It might help.
Yeah, it will reduce the bandwidth things.
Both a shot. Oh no, now where's my Telegram gone? Yeah. Yes, better now. Okay, great. Right, we'll do it without our faces. I need to get back to this report. Have I lost it?
So, is this my mega hole? Look at this. From and to. Where's the from and to? So, listen to this, right? From he says, 683 to 765, 84 meters at 2 grams per ton. And then literally that includes 12 meters.
Look, figure 6. Sorry,
ton.
I've only just seen figure 6. Oh my god. Oh my god. Guys, I can't tell you how much I can't tell you how much I'm smiling right now. Not least because I went all in with my last cash position today, which was a bit a little overzealous even for me. But look how far out those are and how many times they're intersecting. They're just hitting everywhere.
Oh, they must have found a chunk on HAD 140, 1 meter at 152.
Let's hear what Bamps is saying.
The cut-off grades are really high as well in places.
Yeah, they are. They're at 0.2. We've got. Let me get back down to where
are you guys? Are you down in actual drop?
You get a page 20.
I need to get 21. Some control over this because this is not broadcasting in the way I wanted it to. We have clearly got a little bit behind ourselves. Well, I have anyway. There are multiple new diagrams to be looking at. There are some really detailed... Oh, that must be... Is that red, Chris? Is that back to Red Chris? There are some detailed images all over the show.
Let's just read it down from the top. Start at the top again, and let's let you. Now that you can see the report, you start and you read Sandeep's comments, because a few people would have been reading until now, and now we can go through it.
I still don't know where they are.
Oh, I'll read at the top. So
I'm not quite sure where Sandeep's comments are.
They're very top. So I'll do it. We're excited about our continued. There we go.
Exploration success at Red Chris and Javieron, with extensive growth drilling programs delivering a number of new high-grade intercepts in the period. Red Chris, blah, 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 blah. And at Javieron, we intersected several new high-grade intercepts outside of the initial inferred mineral resource estimate, including HAD 33 Wedge 1, which returned 133 metres at 7. Yes, that's 7 grams per tonne. These results continue to support the potential for resource growth outside the existing resource shells. And then the important one's 133 metres at 7 grams per tonne. That's from 1,446 metres, including 55 metres at 9 grams per tonne from 1,449 metres.
It's still getting stronger as it goes deeper.
57 wedge 7 is again another 5.7 grams per tonne. Had 140, 29.1.
That's 613. That's nice and low. That's continuity infill.
Is it low or is it long? Jamie, what would they be measuring? The distance or the depth?
The depth, really.
So they're down to 1,400 meters.
So so it's the distance they've. From what I understand, maybe I'm wrong on this, but when you drill a hole, especially because it deviates, you're drilling. That when they say like, oh, it's 1,400 meters end of hole, I believe that's the measurement of the length of the hole.
So it's
you have to calculate true depth using some trigonometry.
That sounds like something.
Right. So we don't have to get too concerned in that.
We'll let Bamps work.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, and
Bamps is better with that stuff. I'm 99% sure it's the length of the hole, and you have to like work out what the actual true depth is using this. It's a reasonably straightforward trick.
Bamps has said on the other chat, had 141. Look at that, 187. 1,875 meters at 23 meters at 2.7 grams per ton, but that's deep. 1,875 meters.
That's because they're going to show the big numbers, but actually, we'll get to the table later. But there's some other data that's quite interesting in there, and it's worth mentioning. There's a bunch of assays pending. So this isn't even all of the data. So once again, we've been screwed by the labs. But either way,
because I don't know about you guys, but I'm seeing 4 holes so far. But let's see. There's obviously going to be more. Those are the best intercepts. But
let me just continue on with this. Drilling in the report period was focused on potential resource growth at the southeast crescent, northern breccia and eastern breccia, and infill drilling in the southeast crescent zone to support the potential conversion of the inferred resource. So they're actually doing growth and inferred at the moment. Southeast reports for 2 holes, 1 new drill hole completed awaiting assays. Southeast crescent zone infill, 10 new drill holes completed awaiting assays. Northern breccia assays results for 8 drill holes, 4 new reported, and the eastern is reported for 2 holes. So you're telling me we've got 6 holes with 3 new drill holes completed awaiting assays? Are they taking the piss? 6
We're going to
holes.
have such a backlog. It's
and
crazy.
We wet ourselves.
I would like to say those are 6 very significant holes. I mean, those diagrams are just. I'm smiling. I have a very. These are quality rather than quantity here. I mean.
I don't know what I'm looking at the camera for. No one can see me. And there was me laughing because a few of the guys were like, oh, yeah, we'll take 6 or 7. I'm like, right, D-ramps. Like, these guys.
Yeah. I was. Look, Sean did give a bit of a clue in his last thing. He said 6 to 7 weeks, I think. Or I did pick up that he was thinking, look, we might just miss this next set of results before we actually catch up that backlog. I did have that feeling, but I must admit I was 70% that we were going to get 15 to 20 holes tonight. We haven't, but let's carry on. Let's hear what they've got to say here, because so far very, very impressed. I
don't understand, because we got like 3 holes, then we got 4 holes, and now we've got 6 holes. Are you trying to tell me that all year all they've managed to do is drill 10 holes?
A further 10,375 meters of drilling has been completed.
Someone's putting legs somewhere.
So They've done another 18 drill holes, all awaiting assholes. Assholes? So,
They are assholes.
yeah, you can see my subconscious is upset with the labs. Results from 12 completed in June quarter have been received, with 8 holes returning significant assay intercepts with 50 gram meters AU.
We've gone down to
length.
8 drill rigs.
So a total of 194 and a half. Well, that makes sense because we've taken one to Scally, doesn't it?
Well, there's one gone north as well to Apollo.
So maybe.
Oh, wait, did we not know
So
that?
a total of 194,500 meters from 230 holes. Drilling the period is focused on potential resource growth. We've had all of that. So we're awaiting 18 assays. And of course, we're hoping that they're also going to catch up. So really, it's the quarterly that we're going to get the one we maybe expected here. There's obviously no PFS. I haven't looked back on the ASX site. They've announced that probably separately, but I haven't seen it.
I mean, that'd be a real bonus if we got that tonight. So,
oh, jeez.
Keep refreshing.
So,
I just want to go back and look at these pictures again because it's just.
Well, I've come down to plan figure 4, so which is on page 7.
Yeah.
I
mean, you've clearly got.
What I like about this figure is it started to put the alteration on, and you know, we don't get the previous figures haven't kind of mapped that before. And it actually shows you where the 3 main targets are in a nice sort of easy to define manner. Yeah. So, you know, we've got 3 going through Eastern Breccia right now and loads going through the Southeast Crescent and you know, multiple now hitting the Northern Breccia. So we're really starting to get a good sense. I think really the Eastern Breccia is the main zone that needs more density. Yeah. But, you know, really for the other 2, we're starting to get this. We're starting to get a lot of data now in this point where we're going to really be able to, certainly in the next, I would imagine in the next MRE update, that's going to be the shell that they're going to pretty much overlay rather than whereas they did the whole Southeast, which we've now got more data for anyway, but they only had part of the Northern Breccia. They didn't have the whole thing. I mean, the thing is, it's inevitable that this is going to get upgraded. I don't think there's anyone sat here listening and even watching that would think that, you know, 3.4 million ounces or 4.2 million ounces equivalent is going to be it, right? It's 100% going to get upgraded. There is no doubt about it. I think everybody's just trying to play a guessing game and exactly how big that number is going to be.
Well, now that the Northern Breccia has kind of smashed into the Southeast Crescent, that kind of, I don't even know, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's linking up. Look at all of those in between, which is sort of what we had before we even got out that side. But what's the diorite, Jamie? I haven't seen that before.
The diorite is it's a sort of intermediate igneous rock.
That's
can't really see it. The color on it is a bit crap. I can't really perfectly see it.
It's a light green. Yeah.
Is that the one that runs all the way to Outermind?
Well, you've got the dolerite dike, and then you seem to have the Northern Breccia target, Eastern Breccia target, and Southeast Crescent deeps all hosted in diorite, which is a word I haven't seen before. This is still figure 4.
Yes, still figure 4.
Yeah, I'm looking. So where that is, I'm not entirely sure because when you look at the when you obviously look at the other diagrams which show you a 3D cross set, when it shows you the cross section,
the other way around, isn't it?
It cross cuts the meta sediments. So the diorite is I think we did get a sense. I think in a previous diagram on maybe on the GGP presentations they did start to show that. I think that is obviously potentially. I wonder if that's underlaying the breccia.
Yeah.
It would make sense if it did because at least the model that I've got in my head, the breccia pipe's above the volcanic rocks. So yeah. I would imagine that the diorite is at depth. I wonder if they.
Yeah, it is actually. If you, I think figure 5 is kind of showing it, isn't it? That growth potential down the bottom.
Yeah. And if they're starting to get diorite at depth, you're really then starting to get close to where your sort of granitic and ultimately magmatic source rocks are. And that'd be brilliant. I mean, I don't know where because we haven't got any samples of actual granite. I think the granites are they're not actually directly underlaying Havron. They're a little bit off the site. I mean, I know there's a seismic image that kind of picks it out in from one of Artemis Resources presentations, and I think, if I remember rightly, I think it might be in Scallywag we've intercepted some granite as well, so it could be even there. But yeah, ultimately diorite is an intermediate igneous rock. If you Google, like, there's like a simple classification for igneous rocks in general, but diorite form is like kind of reasonably sort of kind of coarse grained, but it's like, so basalts are like fine grained, then you've got gabbros which are nice and coarse grained, diorites that's sort of intermediate, so they're kind of halfway house between coarse and fine, but they're also halfway house between sort of basalt and what we call rhyolites, which are like the really silica rich volcanic rocks, right? So if you Wikipedia has a lovely entry if you wanted to read up on them, but I think that's at depth, and I think that's basically potentially one of the where those fluids that we think that can create a deposit like this are going to be sourced from.
I mean, I'm still in awe of how big an intercept that is. I mean, the actual shorter intercept's just as impressive. Look at that, 85 meters at 11 grams and 0.3% copper. I mean, and we've got some comments from Bamps in the other channel, and he's saying that had 141, he's really excited that that's extended his ovoid theory. Obviously, he thinks 133. W1 is a fantastic result in the
I mean, these numbers. What I like about this is the fact that we have, first of all, we've got long intercepts over 100 meters in some cases, and the gold is a decent gram per ton, sometimes exceptional. For example, the 133. But then we have these lovely really high grade intercepts that are tens of meters, and that's likely intercepting vein structures, right? Some pretty nice veins that are probably located within the core. So yeah,
and to my trained sort of mind, I'm thinking that's why it's the perfect deposit, because we can get done with the stoping. We can target the highest grade areas first to get the highest cash flow first. You'd almost prefer that than a big low grade open pit where that's gonna everything's just gonna be droning in. Here we can be so selective, whilst funding from that money the extension of what's clearly, I mean, an absolutely huge resource.
Nowadays, what's great? Go on, Liam.
No, so go on. You go with your comment.
I was just going to say, I've been going to a few conferences, and one today was all about kind of geochemistry and metallurgy, and kind of how companies and certain organizations are trying to improve the recovery process. And nowadays, there are a lot of machine learning methods that are starting to be applied that can essentially characterize various parts of mines that are potentially much better recoveries than others. So, for example, that high grade area, Newcrest in-house team or GGP, or even if they get a consultancy in to do this kind of work, would essentially be able to map the different regions of the deposit, which should be a lot more easy to recover and potentially provide the best extraction rates, because they'll do the test work. So that I fully agree. I think this high grade stuff would be the target first. You're basically getting, sort of economic grades out straight away, and then you're going to move towards this lower grade, but it's got a lot of tonnage. So it's going to be, that's really where your life of mine comes from, because you're just going to be continuously running that for years and years. And obviously that's great for jobs. That's great for all the other stuff that comes with a mine. I'm truly impressed with these results.
It's almost as well. I just think it's a match made in heaven. We've all gone through the Telfer situation and the fact that we're so unique in jurisdiction and all the other things that is what you'd put on your I'm going camping checklist before I buy anything. But to sit here and a perfect deposit. And me and Paddy used to joke about this ages ago when we used to say, it was open in all directions, all of this. Even I didn't dream it would be like this. But you imagine 4 years ago, GGP said we found a 1 million deposit, but it's all at 11 grams per ton. We'd be going absolutely berserk. And essentially that's what we found. Not only that, but then you found the next 20 years still discoverable that we already know is pretty economic to block cave. You can build and plan and fund that from your amazing concentrated, easy to mine by stoping resource. It's just the perfect ore body, in my opinion.
And what's even better, BAMS will always scream about this as well. It's vertical, so you've got lack of the ore dilution is minimal.
Yeah.
So it's just a perfect blend of so many factors, and this is so I can't explain how rare this is. Most geologists don't ever find like ore deposits, let alone something as big as this, and it's kind of what we're just talking about, almost as perfect as this in a way, right? So the only shame about these results is that we don't have more data, but sometimes that's not in your control. Like ultimately the labs, they have a schedule, they're in the backlog. There's so much exploration in Australia at the minute, it's a bloody joke. And they have COVID situations that are probably staff are off and all this other stuff.
And look, it's just postponing things. And I like to think that most long-term holders or people who really believe in this, who are going to be still probably here in the next 2 or 3 years, the drilling hasn't slowed down. It did at the beginning of the year, which obviously did impact those results. But at some point, we're going to catch up all of these results because the drilling there's been no delay in drilling. So we just hit the postpone button for a short while, which is, come on, as GGP investors, patience has got to be one of our biggest virtues.
No, I mean,
100%. You're in the wrong sector if patience isn't one of your virtues for this.
No, I think there's different sorts of investments in mining, right? You've got those which you go in and you're basically chasing rainbows, and if you get a big, and if it starts pumping, you can get out and you've pretty much doubled your money, or if you're lucky, 10x in very next to no time. Then you've got the ones which are pretty much data led, and ultimately have a deposit that they're developing, and if it gets financed, you're in the money. And then you've got those which actually produce and are producing revenues, you're earning dividends, etc., etc. They're kind of the three camps. And I just feel like GGP,
there's a jury report, guys. Let's just keep going through this because I'm just getting word that there's a jury report.
There's a jury report.
No, that'll be the one that we've already had.
Is he sure?
Yeah, because we had one 2 days ago, didn't we, or 3 days ago? Jury came out 2 or 3 days
ago. Yeah, we've got it. Is it the same one though?
So down to figure 6 for a second for me.
Let's talk about figure 6.
It's a BAMS would tell me to look at the RL level, so it's a 4300. So it is a slightly different level than what we're used to. Now, what I see that's interesting is that post mineral dolerite that goes off to outer mind is containing gold.
Yeah, it has some gold. That I reckon's remobilization. So that will be that because we know it's we know it's post mineralization. They've already said this.
Yes.
And so that means obviously mineralization is there previously. So all that's happened here is that this dolerite dike has essentially come in and probably through just temperature alone has essentially taken up some gold into it, and obviously when it cools down it crystallizes in the thing.
And
that'll be quite tough to get out because dolerite and any igneous rock is a lot harder than say a metasediment is.
Okay.
So it will cost more to get anything out of the dike, and I think as well they may leave it because when you're doing an underground mine, what you want is natural supports, and I think the dike is perfect for that. You've got a really resistant rock that can essentially provide one of the sort of supports for some of the levels, so they may just leave that in there.
Okay, that makes sense.
So I think it's quite interesting what the language Newcrest are using here now with regards to jury. This last graph. It just says new crystals can be assessed in the assay results for initial scout drill holes at Goliath, Outer Mind, and Los Diablos targets in Patterson Range East. Initial drilling has been completed in the Parlay and Saddle targets within the Black Hills project. A total of 3,856 meters of drilling has now been completed this field season on the Jury JV, and that does make me wonder if they're going to continue like they do at Have with Jury through the summer.
That's the big question.
So this is good because it means that we have stuff waiting again with this. I'm very we'll probably maybe get on to Goliath and other things after this, but just as a side note, I didn't say much when it got released on LSE, but I was pretty happy with the Goliath and Black Hills data. So yeah, we'll get into that eventually maybe, but it's I agree, the language is good.
It's good to hear. That's good to hear.
I still can't find the Newcrest report, so never mind.
Which Newcrest report?
I see the Jury one. It's actually I was refreshing my screen, not the fact that donkey. What a prize donkey!
You sure you haven't been drinking, Liam?
Oh man, I tell you, what is it? I got Nanny State by Brewdog. It's alcohol free.
Very nice, very nice.
So I'm just gonna scroll really quickly to upset Bamps, because there's normally some more There's normally more diagrams down the bottom of these things. Here we go.
We have cross sections.
We do have cross sections. I don't know how important they are. If there's anything we can gain
Newcrest
from them.
Newcrest have just released a tweet. And it says, we're excited by our continued exploration success at Redcrest and Haverian with Greatland Gold. So they've named us there almost as if we own both. Our extensive growth drilling programs continue to deliver a number of new high-grade intercepts supporting potential for resource growth. So, I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. The number of them doesn't matter. That's all we want to hear is every time that they're high-grade and they were growth drilling, they're outside of the shell we have. Everything we've had for the last year is outside of the MRE,
which is just crazy, isn't it? I mean, is the geologist that's up in that's appeared recently, talking to Sean Day, talking about 20 million ounces? Is that what we're looking at now? A 20 million ounce deposit?
So I've always tried to err on the side of caution, just because a 10 million ounce deposit is such a huge thing. That's the biggest in decades. So that's always been my aim. I'll be brutally honest, and I work all my numbers on 10 million until proven otherwise. But I must admit, the moment I saw those holes plotted there, is the first time I just thought they just can't stop hitting.
No.
And I just think when you no matter which way you cut the measurements here, if they're able to extract most of this, it might well be bigger than 10, and that's a huge thing. I mean, I don't care what the share price does, because I've listened to enough Rick Rule and followed enough people who've made billions off investing to know that those on curve cycles are 100% true. And if you have the right deposits in the right country, at some point your price will re-rate and significantly, and there's no doubt about it. We are down at the bottom. For anyone who has patience here, it's just about how many multiples of your money you're now going to.
I completely agree, and I've seen various comments on LinkedIn response to some of the posts, and I think it's a great idea that you bring up people like Rick Rule, because ultimately these guys, they play the mining game. They've been doing it for years, and ultimately, it's like Stu says, patience is key with some company. It depends which company you're in. As I said, I kind of split them up into those three camps. But really, Greatland have a deposit here. They're basically essentially progressing it towards a mine, and they've got other targets that they believe in the area could produce something similar. Companies like that have delivered and continue to do the right things with good teams and good JV partners. They're great companies to back. I don't want to, trash talk too many of the other explorers in the region, because there are some good ones, but there is one or two that are essentially neurology and don't have those things in place and don't have any data, and it's essentially rainbow chasing. And when you're doing that, what you have to understand is that when it goes on a pump or when it gets, run up to, city valuation, you got to take profits quick on that, because it can easily come coming down. I mean, I've been caught out with a couple in the past, but I really don't think Greatland is one of those. We essentially are being led by multiple drilling intercepts and multiple data sources. So I think it's a completely different investment proposition than something like those other juniors that you see on the market, right? I guess that's the comments I would make about that, for sure.
It is 100%. And I think we all know that. That's why I mentioned Rick Rule, because we should all, I've learned to follow his strategy, and really the Dutch guy, Willem. You invest in a discovery hole.
That Willem Middelkop.
That's him.
That's the guy, yeah.
You invest in a discovery hole. It's AIM is such a minefield to begin with. Whether or not it's manipulated, whatever happens with that, you're going to Twitter all the. It's usually new investors. Everybody gets burned. I got burned within the first 3 years, just everywhere, and it's a really simple rule to follow. Don't do anything on hype, but if somebody brings back 100, or 1,000 meter intercept, I mean, that's 133 meters at 7 grams. That's 1,000 gram meters.
Massive. Guys. I mean, that's a discovery hole on its own. Imagine if you I mean, let's be honest. Like when Had 105 came out, I think when was that? Like 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
Something like that. That is a game changer here, because at that point you've nigh on confirmed that there is a discovery to be made here. If that was that hole, the 133, it would have been the exact same story. That's good enough to be a discovery hole.
Totally.
And recently we've just had Antipa, who have put out their thing, and they got one that was at 362 at 1.4, which is, again, that's fantastic for Antipa, and they've led with that, and they've gone, discovery, Minyari East, right? Yeah. And that's great when you hear that. So with the fact that we're getting that essentially in run-of-the-mill infill drilling, it's just absolutely crazy. And I think as much as some people might look and go, oh, well, we've only got this much data. Well, that's not because they haven't done any work. It's just we're waiting for results. But the quality of these results, that's what you need to focus on here. The quality, they're as good as I've seen in recent updates. For sure.
And in recent years, I mean, I can't remember reading too many other people's results in the last 8 years in the sector having much. It's that other company in Australia, I forget their name now, who's discovered similar time to us. That's the only one I can remember reading that had, this sort of gram meters. And when I first started investing, there's a nice report that's been posted around many times, but it's all about timesing the meters by the grams and seeing how much.
It's the best way to compare deposits. For sure.
Anything under like 100, is just not viable. But anything over 100 is really starting to get, interesting. But the fact that ours is concentrated all in this vertical body, it's. I think it's actually a great story if you have the patience now. It's like we said.
See, when you look at the cross sections, I'm just down here, and we talked about the diorite. They don't map the diorite on the cross sections, which is why I'm pretty confident where they've got that as a because the thing when they put it on the other figure, they've applied a transparency, which when you do that, you want to show things that are obviously overlaying that and are at higher level. So I'm pretty sure that diorite is basically in the center of the breccia and is located at depth. That's how I'm interpreting it right now, until I can basically be proved otherwise.
So this is important to read. It says at the Southeast Crescent, drilling targeting higher grade mineralization at depth was conducted during the reporting period. Drilling is being conducted on a 75 meter by 75 meter spacing. It used to be 50-50, didn't it? And has been extended to 250 meters below the initial inferred mineral resource extents. Results from 2 holes have been received, with significant results being Had 133 wedge 1. So that's the 133 at 7, 55 at 9, 20 meters at 11. Okay, that's all from 1446, 1449, 1519. So again, look, that's one continuous. There's gold right the way through there. It's not bitty like it's the Minyari is. That's perfect. Then this is important. It's Had 133 W1 has extended the high grade mineralization 250 meters below the base of the inferred mineral resource estimate. This intercept is 150 meters below the previously reported Had 33, which was I-85 at 11, which we were all our best intercept from the last results. which was about, as I say, 150 meters below. And that one included 13 meters at 32 grams per ton. Now, that's what Magic was talking about earlier. You've got 13 meters is a significant tonnage in itself, and it's at 32 grams and 0.5% copper. I mean, that's going to be a bumper year when you're mining that block.
I've just had I don't even suppose we've got a chance to tell everybody, right? But we don't have our normal producer on the show this evening helping us. However, what we do have is Bamps. Bamps is sat in the studio, laying notes into us and helping us along the way, and just giving us his comments. So, Bamps, I know you're listening, so thank you so much for staying with us this evening.
Yeah, absolutely.
And being in there as our producer. It's a solid effort you're doing there. But he says 141 wedge 1 in assay as long as 141, 1985 long. That's 1,300 meters of ore. Wow.
Sheesh.
Yes, it's just stupid. It's. I mean, I'm just reading a little. I mean, obviously, I've been reading in patches here. I think it's worth saying as well. Like, they've hit the southeast, they've hit the northern, and they've got at least one. They've got the had 141 going to the eastern as well. So what I'm pleased is this direction now, where we're going to start hitting these lesser kind of known areas of this deposit to really start to map the extents. And like Stu was saying, we're getting a lot of intercepts that you can see are quite a little bit of ways out of the original shell now. So I fully anticipate that these, 2D plans that we get given is starting I suppose the circumference of that is going to start to, creep outwards, which is always a good thing.
He's done his trigonometry. 141 is 1,343 meters true depth. Oh, we're going down, going
we
down.
are.
And that's the thing, is they're getting sort of almost cocky. Oh, let's just go and do it over here. Just stick it in. Let's just see what comes up. And they're finding it when they're even trying not to find it. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like they want to find the edge so they can say, right, we found the edge. We can carry on with other stuff now. But they keep finding more. Go on.
I'm just looking at the inferred mineral resource estimates, and just to put into context those joules and those grams, the first mineral resource estimate is 52 megatons at 2 grams per ton and 0.31 Cu. And the Crescent Zone, they're doing the average grade at 3.8 AU. And 0.61 Cu. So again, that tells me, and I'm no expert here by all means, but the upper zone, which is obviously what they found first and looked at first and have the infill drilling for, is still high grade, but it's higher grade copper. And then as we get deeper, we're getting less copper, but much higher grade gold. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm observing. The copper decreases at depth. I'd say that's a good general observation to make, but the gold is consistent and borderline, even in some holes getting higher grade.
Yeah.
Which suggests we have, and this is the thing with intrusion-related gold deposits. From what I remember doing homework on, they are zone systems. So you will, and I think the gold prefers usually to be at depth rather than copper. I think just due to the physicochemical conditions.
And so dense, I'm assuming, again, not thinking, but obviously it's so heavy, you're thinking, well, maybe actually that would sort of, when it settles and cools, maybe it is going to.
One of the reasons from memory, and you know what, I should revise my own presentations because I'm pretty sure I put it all in there. I know in a lot of intrusion-related gold systems, you have different fluid types. So you have ones which are more carbonic, so have CO2, water, and they kind of come from depth. But then you start getting more oxidizing fluids towards the surface.
Yeah.
And I think the copper prefers the oxidizing, whereas the gold prefers the more reducing fluids, which then makes sense because that's then where you'd concentrate your gold, is with the reducing fluids are probably more at depth than they are towards the surface.
Yeah.
So that's just off the top of my head from my own memory. I think that would make sense with the zoning. none of this probably matters to most investors, but I love it. So
You know what? I think we're so well. A lot of us are so deep in this. I mean, it's my whole life, and I love that. I love it because I was a failure at anything geology or geography related at school, and I've never had an interest in anything like this before. And ever since we first found the satellites back in the day, I just thought this is great.
yeah.
and I've become a mini geologist. Really, I've loved your presentations, man, Jake. I was probably one of the very first ones to watch them, if I'm honest. But
I love
brilliant.
producing them. I really want to. Do you know what? When I get enough time, I do want to make more of them. It's so busy in PhD. You just never, you never find the moment to start bringing together anything else except for the work in your PhD. But I mean, yeah, I don't. It's funny because I got tagged a bunch in that one that they've got out in Australia that has just come out or will be coming out. There's a PhD opportunity out there. I'm going to make contact with their supervisor because
you should do. You should do that.
I just want to kind of.
Gain.
I mean, ultimately, not to get it because I can't. I'm in a PhD, and also.
Well, how far into the PhD? Because you could pivot if it was the really right
2 years deep now, but like it's more the fact that theirs is Aussie nationals only for this one because of COVID. But it's more the fact that I think with the work I've done previously with presentations, any candidate that's wanting to go for that should really watch them because you're going to get a big head start. And I think I would just like to get to know the kind of candidate and the supervisor to the point where, you know, ultimately I'm quite interested in their research. And I think when you work in such a niche area, right, it happens in academia, it's very niche. When you've got people that are interested in the area, you tend to want to speak to those people because it can be quite lonely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But anyway, getting back to the...
I mean, it just continues because we'd stopped at, including 13 meters at 32 grams per ton from 1363. Then it moves on, and also including 14.5 at 32. So that's 2 blocks, and that's from so 2 blocks within 50 meters of each other at 32 grams of 14, 15 meters each. As a result, from one further hole, Hadley 6 Wedge 2 is pending. Drilling to assess the extent of mineralization below the southeast crescent. Inferred resource is ongoing. Then had 57 drilled to test lower target positions in northern breccia, also traverse the southeast crescent zone within the initial inferred mineral and resource footprint. Results from this hole demonstrates good alignment with modeled grade and thickness within the southeast crescent zone.
Yeah,
supports
I'm looking at including that one now.
High grade. So what hole is that? Had
57.
So 23 meters at 5.7. That's your southeast crescent.
A wedge. They've got had 57 W7 in the table that when you get down there to page 21, and they hit. So they got something from 613 to 636. They got 23 meters at 5.7 gram per ton gold and a 0.7% copper at a 0.2 gram per ton cutoff. Does include 15 meters of that is at 8.6 gram per ton and 1 meter is at 45. So that 1 meter is obviously just a big chunk of gold rich minerals that is probably in a small vein. Then they go a bit deeper and they hit this one for me is quite exciting. They did hit a 29.3 at 1 at 660 to 689, but when they go down to 900 and they go from 906 to 976, it's 70 meters at 2.2 gram per ton, 0.03%. So it's so consistent. These grades.
That's the continuity, isn't it? It's perfect.
I'm looking forward. I mean, we're going to get a lovely little proactive interview tomorrow morning, probably from Sean. Yeah. And he'll probably be screaming about how these same phrases that we're saying. So, yeah, I can't really say any more positive words really about the grades here and the data because it's just continually. When I never get nervous from results like this because I just feel like I'm that confident now that every single result is going to be hitting a good chunk of mineralization here at Havieron. I'm not worried here.
I've got breaking news. Breaking news. We interrupt this programming with a newsflash. I
That's
appreciate
it.
it's
That's
not
it.
it's not Greatland Gold related, but maybe this is what people are expecting.
Well, the
Artemis
gold
next door,
price.
they have been given their heritage clearances. They are going drilling, so we can expect a
Oh,
drill pad to
Oh,
the north,
Artemis are going.
which I think that's massive because if we're drilling the south of the border, they're drilling the north of the border. There could be further twists to this story still to come, especially if they're
Yeah,
spreading it out and finding
their
more gold.
data is their data is quite important for that target. You know, because ultimately we border it. So
Yeah.
it can
yeah,
only be good if I assume really if they find something, can't it?
I
'Cause
like it when I see
Agreed.
other
I'm nodding my
people
head.
finding. You know, when Antipa, I got sent that. I read it today. It was encouraging to see that they're getting things because ultimately, like this idea that the Patterson is essentially a district is obviously up for. It's the jury's out on it, but I feel like the more you start hitting massive intercepts, and it's happening in multiple places, not just at Havieron or Winu. It's now here at Minyari. It's at Parlay. It's at wherever. You
it's
know,
district scale, isn't it?
district
There's been
scale deposits are especially new ones because ultimately, like one thing, this to me, the Patterson, I mean, to my knowledge at least, is possibly the best modern example of undercover exploration success I've seen. And everything that in terms of like the
Is that
main,
just because of us?
I think that's us. It's Newcrest. Obviously when they obviously have done quite a good amount of work, but I feel like Havieron's the big sort of catalyst. Artemis, Antipa, all these other things, they don't do as much work in this area if Havieron doesn't exist. Rio don't turn up in this area if Havieron didn't exist. It only takes one big find to then suddenly bring the cavalry, and that's happened throughout history. But ultimately, like most of the major systems that have been found in the last like 50 years have all been found on the surface. And you go anywhere in the world, Canada, Australia, Africa, a lot of them are found in outcrop.
And you just think, how lucky are we that we happen to be right next door to the people who do deep mining best, or at least are market leaders.
They're definitely up there.
Every time you look at, I know I always use ducks on LSE, but I just can't find a duck that doesn't line up for this company, this deposit, this jurisdiction, this, just everything about it seems like a Carlsberg advert. If I were to dream it up and I actually knew what I was talking about, and I could take myself 7 years back and know what I know now, this is what I would have designed.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like, I just think when you start getting district scale systems talked about, everybody wants to then start exploring in those regions, and start using your approaches and things like that. So that's why I'm excited to see these other companies do well. I think there's really only one that I'm a bit like, I don't really care what they do. But
is that something that you wish for?
Very subtle, very subtle. Don't snap my wishbone.
Yeah, yeah. That's that. I just have it. I have an issue with just like it grinds my gears when I see them kind of use Havieron's name a little bit because. And even Telfers, because I just think you don't have any data. You have nothing.
That's the thing, isn't it? I don't mind our neighbours because that is true neurology, and of course, it's highly possible. The distance they are, and the amount and the misleading diagrams and information. I mean, God, even our neighbours was pretty. Antipa was pretty misleading, wasn't it, guys? We looked at some of those diagrams, and is that Havieron? Isn't that Havieron? What if they've just taken our picture and put their drills over it? I mean, I think we all, again, this is where you should listen to people like Rick Rule because they tell you about how murky this space is. And I'm not. I don't pull any airs or graces. My heart's on my sleeve. I wasn't invested in power metals, but go and have a look there. And I know this isn't the chat. We can talk about other things, but that's a very, very good example of, don't get me wrong, Paul Johnson actually started off some of the GGP as helping with the funding and so on and so forth. But he's a spin doctor, and he's a good one at that. And I got in there, and it was the amounts of RNSs. They literally have 5 or 6 a week, 5 or 6 releases of news a week.
It's outrageous. Don't
the
put them on the
reports
bot
are so technical.
because it'll bury you.
it will, and the reports are so technical. I'm actually wasting my subscription because of all the RNSs coming through, and I keep going on there and saying, guys, wait for a discovery hole. Guys, wait for a discovery hole. This guy is just spinning out. He's waiting for capital to hit him and just enriching himself. But it has lots of good prospects, fine, but it's the epitome of where you do lose 50% of your money is getting involved with companies like that before they've found something.
Yeah, and it's what you do with those deposits. They could be the greatest pieces of land in the world, but if you're not prepared to get your hands dirty and actually do the required work, and instead of more focused on essentially mining the stock market rather than
spinning them out into IPOs,
it's an issue.
Yeah, these are not money men like GH who it's a different type of money man. They resource men, and I hear people saying, oh, he's got such a good track record. I haven't found it yet. I think he's got a good track record of making himself rich, a bit like David Lenegas. All of those guys have done very well because they got out, before it fell. But it's very simple, actually, this game. But it's not when you get involved, and that's why I'm happy to talk about other companies and say this, because it's very simple. Wait for a discovery hole, and if it's well over 100 gram meters, i.e., the amount of meters times by the grams of gold, and the average grade is sort of 2, you're in the money. Jump in as quick as you can and enjoy the party like we have for the last while. But before that, they all seem to be the same. I follow Canadian ones, I follow lots of Aussie ones, and it's plagiarism deluxe. It's almost like they literally steal the formatting from other people's RNSs and overlay it and just talk gibberish, which they know most of us don't understand. That's why I must admit, I'm not a fan of this Pathfinder mineral. And in my layman opinion, if you drill into dirt deep enough, you're going to find all sorts of minerals, and at some point, some of those along a long length of drill hole are going to be associated with gold. So, I like the jewelry stuff because that's different in my opinion. And Magic, you can definitely shoot me down here, but Scally results versus jewelry results are quite different.
They are different. I think I think that the Pathfinders are useful because obviously they increase the probability of you finding an ore deposit, but you have to use them in the right way because ultimately, yes, essentially the same minerals that occur with, say, gold do occur in just essentially barren rocks. So you have to be careful with distinguishing between what is an ore or what is an alteration assemblage versus essentially background. And usually there's thresholds you can use, like certain ratios. You can ratio an element against another element, and there's plots out there that essentially from multiple mineral districts that will, once you reach above that threshold, it will suggest it's more alteration versus background. I think the Scally ones, to me, very, like, if you're going to go with it being alteration, it's pretty much very distal to what essentially would be a gold find, which is why they've moved their targets much further towards, I think it's the south, isn't it? They've gone towards Swan and Teach. So we really have to see what happens there. If you're then still getting the same thing, really you're starting to think, well,
where to now? Yeah,
where are we going to go now? And really at that point you're starting to think, well, we've got these other targets that we haven't drilled. Maybe we might want to.
I mean, what's the new, the Riddle license? And I've been around long enough, but I'm pretty sure we've had 2 electromagnetic surveys over Scally. So I mean, you're not going to do a third that's going to, unless you've got some sort of new technology that's going to do something else. So there was obviously something they wanted to get a better look at the second time round, but 3 won't make sense. So I agree. I think
it'd be a waste of money, and really all you're doing is just propping up the data set for potentially another company to take it over from you, because that's really what happens. You don't find anything, you think there's nothing there, someone else is going to come along. Maybe it's a Paul Johnson spin doctor, or maybe it's actually somebody,
maybe it's Callum Baxter who drills deeper.
Yes, it doesn't matter who it is. Somebody's going to look at your land and see an opportunity and think there's something that you've missed, and you then sell it off. And sometimes it's a great decision, sometimes it's a bad decision. Newcrest have had multiple projects over the years. Havieron was one they missed, but they've managed to get back in to it. But it happens. It's a bit like when we were just saying about, like, when you're waiting for a discovery hole. I think it's such good advice, because ultimately then you have some substance to base an investment on. And if you have to give up the initial pump because of that, say from sub 1p to, I don't know, 2 something pence, if we're just making up numbers at the moment. But then I'd honestly be completely happy with that if then that company then does what GGP done and 10x's from 2.5p. Would you care about the first mini thrust from 1 to 2.5p if it meant that you could go from 2.5p to 25p? Because I know I certainly would.
And I think that's what the biggest thing you've got to learn. We've all got to learn with investing is patience. It's amazing how we watch that graph go up and down in a wave pattern. Hopefully sometimes in an upward trend rather than a downward one. But isn't it funny how when we do have some money to invest, or I'm speaking of me personally, how hard it is to set a price, put a limit order, and wait for it? Because I've spent 7 years trying to do this, and I'm now at about a 10% success ratio with setting an order. I did it today, but not before I'd bought at 9:15 this morning, and then went, "What are you doing? Just wait until the afternoon at least." and I set an order at 1880, and of course it was hit. And that's a great piece of advice, I think, to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Investing side of things is just forget that you don't even have to follow the technical analysis. Just buy red, buy a down day, buy a downtrend if you believe in the asset. But we've all thought it's been a good opportunity from 60p up to here, and man, I mean, the only thing that could ruin us now is the gold macro, and let's be honest, that's got every duck going for it too. So
yeah.
Happy to be patient.
I think Minyari is a good example. Like, I feel like before this, I mean, they have actually got they actually have JORC resources on some of their stuff, which automatically makes Antipa a little bit better than other juniors which don't have that. But now they've actually done that. So I completely agree with the analysis of their deposit. It's very bitty in comparison to GGP. It's definitely, in terms of from this early stage of their exploration, it definitely looks like metallurgically it'd be a bit more difficult to essentially extract their ore. I'm not saying it's not economic. I'm just saying it probably would involve extra costs. Yeah. But now they've actually done a drill and it's hit that 362 at 1.4. Now there's an investment proposition, because they also have JVs with Rio and also Newcrest and IGO. So. Yeah. They have something there. If we go back to the Wishful company, they do not have this. They do not have. I can't remember because I don't really focus on them, but I'm pretty sure they don't have a JV. Somebody told me that sampling is underway for them, but I as far as I don't think that's drilling. I think that's more.
It's soil sampling.
It's soils, and I've just been in a conference. Like I said, the conference. It's apparently. Soil sampling is, although it's a tried and tested method and obviously has its use, it's sometimes not the best method for undercover exploration, because soils are massively they're heterogeneous, which means there's lots of mixed material in there just by the very nature of soils. And obviously that means it could be transported from anywhere sometimes, and you might not necessarily be measuring what you think you're measuring. So I know early on we used, I think Havieron used, or GGP used groundwaters or MMI sampling. I think
MMI, it was MMI.
They seem to suggest in this conference that can be a better approach sometimes, because ultimately the groundwater will take up elements from the underlying rocks there. So you're bypassing essentially the transported cover, and you're going, or at least a portion of it, and you're more likely to be measuring the signature of an underlying ore deposit versus in soils. So when people talk about, oh yeah, there's doing sampling, you've got to be careful what sampling they're doing and whether that's the best approach. So,
and Magic, I want to ask you a geology question in so much as, and as you can tell, I'm quite sort of frank, but whilst I'm obviously thinking Callum's a hero, I thought GH was a hero for a brief period. Part of me sort of wonders, where does the geology come in? Am I right in saying that it's obviously a great plan and strategy to go out and look for deep undercover deposits? We all know, if you've read any literature over the last 10 years, that's what it has been suggested will be required because of the shortage of new deposits and so on and so forth. So to me, Callum, the mere fact that we went and managed to secure this land is a shrewd bit of business, of course, by GH or Callum or both. And they went to go drill deeper. And then you were to drill and drilled relatively close, I'm assuming, to those original Newcrest holes.
yeah.
But then what's interesting to note in my sort of thesis here, where I guess I'm saying how much does the geologist matter, is that had one was not that much more impressive than sort of Jury, as far as I can recall. It's the second round of variant drilling where we had 5 and where suddenly we got into the ore body. And is that really where, of course, the geology comes in and the business acumen comes in finding where to drill, but actually then that second drilling, and this is where I'm hopeful for Scallywag, is you went from okay with drill results to bonanza drill results, discovery hole, okay, this is the real deal.
I think so. From the very start, geology is applied. Like when you pick in an area, let's say you want to invest in this piece of land, you're going to do your homework on the regional geology, maybe some local discoveries that were made. Even if it's artisanal mining, you want to know if there's any sort of activity there, and if there's any publications. From you're kind of doing a bit of a desk study. I definitely think where it definitely comes in more, when you start sampling any outcrop, if it's not there because it's all undercover, the initial data from Newcrest's drilling, which was before the 400 meter, 430 meter level where the actual ore body starts, they would have definitely had some indications from those at rocks that there may have been something more to explore at depth. The thing is, even with the geophysics, geophysics is really important, but actually interpreting what that could be requires geological knowledge as well.
Yeah.
So it definitely happens throughout the process, but certainly from the minute you start, after you've done your desk study and you think, okay, let's just say, for example, you're exploring for a porphyry system. Porphyry deposits form in subduction zones. So you think there's this historic subduction zone based on the literature that's been published. And you've got maybe rocks in the area that from local mines, from local drilling that has intersected, volcanic material that lends itself to being kind of subduction related. So you've already got a sense that, okay, we're going to explore for porphyries now. You're then going to run some geophys to maybe look for a magnetic anomaly. You get that, great. You think that could be representative of, say, a copper ore body. You then punch maybe an RC drill hole. Because of that, you get the funding for that. Or even
is copper the main magnetic metal you're looking for?
Yeah, I think copper is probably the one that's going to really elevate that magnetic signature for sure. It depends on the system you're looking for, but ultimately, so if you've got copper in an ore body, that will obviously produce a bit of an anomaly. I think iron's the other one. If you've got iron-rich sulfide material, certainly if it's magnetite, certainly even if it's pyrrhotite, which is what really gives it away for Havieron. That's what I worried.
That's what I worried about, because it's Australia's known for its iron ore. So I sort of thought when initially things happened that maybe that was going to be what we were.
Yeah, you want to. That's why you want to get surveys which can actually penetrate at depth, because the cover, the transported cover in Australia, it can, as we've seen, be quite deep, and in the Permian especially, you get a lot of hematite, which is obviously a iron-rich mineral, mainly because these were desert sands and they're forming in very oxidizing conditions. So you want something which is going to definitely penetrate at depth. And at that point, which is what they did, they managed to get a much better signature at depth to be able to, potentially say, okay, well, there's clearly something further down than what was present in the surface. So, and at that point, you can do soil sampling, you can do groundwater. There's various methods that if you didn't want to drill straight away, you would do. But then once you hit the drilling and you start putting out cores or even rock chips, because if you've got a shallow deposit, you don't need to do any RC or any diamond. You can just do air core. You can basically just bring out some chips. That's when the geologist starts to get paid, because ultimately they're now going to be analyzing those rocks, characterizing them. They're going to be describing the mineralogy, and preferably at this point, you want to be starting to think about what order are the minerals coming in, how do they relate, the alteration. All of this information is vital, because later on down the line, if assuming that this ends up becoming a mine, this data is crucial for the metallurgy.
I mean, how did they do this in the early days with a specifically sort of diamond core, even RC bag drilling? I mean, how is a geologist sitting at a desk somewhere, linking all of this up into a visual model or otherwise? I mean, it's just quite mind-blowing.
Like, I suppose, computer technology, so much exploration was just done by prospectors going out into the field, mapping rocks. Thinking and then starting to think about how these were formed. There's some amazing early pioneers that were developing mineral models and kind of going out and trying to prove them, in the likes of Canada, USA, Australia. And obviously at that point in time, so many deposits were just not discovered at surface. So they've got so much outcrop to look at. You would never, ever at that time be looking undercover, because first of all, you don't need to. You've got all these deposits surface. But second of all, the gold price, copper price was nowhere near the levels as it is now. So you would never, ever be able to economically extract anything probably below about a couple of 100 meters. So, yeah, it's really a function of time as to how we now, these days, there'll be geologists sitting at a desk and they're obviously getting this live feed of data, probably pictures of the core box with hyperspectral data, which is basically a way in which you can map alteration. This is what's amazing with Havieron, right? Is that for the new PhD that will start, they're going to get access to all of the core, but they're also going to get access to the TrueScan data, which is basically a piece of equipment which essentially in real time at site, you pass the core through it and it measures essentially the infrared response of various minerals in the rock, and that will basically tell you about alteration and some of the mineralogy straight away. It's a kind of cheap method. And all of that information is going to be so important to the PhD, who ultimately their goal for that PhD is to essentially develop a model or sort of, I guess, a mechanism for how this type of deposit forms. Because even though it's an intrusion-related gold deposit, there's no doubt that this deposit has differences between other intrusion-related gold deposits. So I think early on, I thought that the granite source or the granites that are feeding this, normally they are supposed to be reduced. But most of the granites in the Patterson are oxidizing. They're magnetite series rather than ilmenite series, which automatically is a difference to other intrusion-related gold systems around the planet. So even things like that, like working out, okay, well then how does that then change the kind of way we then form these minerals that ultimately are the ore minerals? It's all stuff like that that matters. And that really only comes after you've got a ridiculous amount of data like this, because at this stage, yes, you have a hypothesis, but you haven't got enough drilled data or rocks to essentially sample that can help you develop that model.
Right.
So yeah, the geologist is important no matter at what stage, but it definitely
absolutely, that just provides so much more context.
So important because these are the guys that will essentially form the model for how you then go on to do further exploration. So
when you think about the accuracy required to dig a decline and spend 141 or whatever million it is, it really boggles the mind at how that's a great link you've provided there before. Where obviously we know what geologists do, but now we really know what geologists do and where the link is made to Callum and his value for us, really. They're quite interesting. And North has said, for reference, magnetite and pyrite or pyrrhotite are respectively nearly the sole producers of a magnetic response in an AEM.
Yes, yes. So
Magnetite
pyrrhotite
nearing
is
exclusively.
pyrrhotite. I've got some in my Zambian rocks, and it's basically it's an iron sulfide, but it's not perfect. Like if you're talking about the proportions of iron to sulfur, it's not quite perfectly FeS. But yes, it can have substitutions of other elements into it that I think can increase its magnetism. But magnetite is in the name. If you've got that there, it's going to hit a
Very true. Very
yeah.
true.
So your mineralogy is very, very, very important. I know. So have we got any other like major questions?
I've got a couple here.
Oh, we've been talking away, Liam, and you've
yeah,
just been
hello.
sat in the background.
No,
I
I've
know.
been doing
I
all
mean,
sorts.
I'm usually quiet.
I've made a few posts. I've lifted some diagrams. I've opened Google Earth. He said we're gonna skip North's question. I might come back to you to North's question, the big main question for another time. But what do you think about the implication might be from if diorite was being intercepted in that breccia?
Sorry, can you repeat that one? I was reading.
What do you think the implication might be from diorite was being intercepted in the breccia?
I think that if it is the best evidence yet of there being magmatic or igneous related rocks underneath the breccia, meaning that the breccia is more than likely a hydrothermal collapse breccia. That's how I would interpret that. It's significant because all this time I feel like whilst I've been saying, oh yeah, we've got granites, oh yeah, it produces fluids which ultimately drives this system, and yes, we do have regional evidence for granites, there is yet to be in the drill holes any intersection apart from that dolerite dike essentially of any igneous rocks that are close to Havieron. But I feel like the diorite now is a good piece of evidence because I mean even the diorite isn't a felsic rock, isn't a granite, it's a more intermediate composition than a dolerite. And yeah, you can basically kind of, when you have intrusions coming in, you have felsic ones, but then sometimes if you then supplement that with, say, a more basic / mafic melt, you can then generate these intermediate compositions, which then can basically spawn off of a granite batholith, which is ultimately what underlies, I think, the Patterson. I think we have a very large granitic batholith, not too dissimilar to what you see in Cornwall, that ultimately ends up driving the hydrothermal fluids into these rocks, and luckily in our case forms a deposit.
So I don't want to pour cold water on anything, but if I take you back to figure 4 on page 7, I've just noticed something that I hadn't before. So we've got at the very top of it in bold writing, limit of calc-silicate alteration. That's the first time I've seen anything like that. So that's so we've got the key there that says calc-silicate alteration plus breccia. So I wonder if you can comment on that, Magic. What's calc-silicate alteration? Is that?
So yeah, that's the stuff which, when we start reacting the wall rock with the hydrothermal fluids, we are essentially producing a new set of minerals, which is alteration. In this case, because we're dealing with carbonates, there's going to be a lot of calcium being remobilized. And of course, that's the calc part. Normally, these hydrothermal fluids are very silica rich and will deposit quartz. So a lot of the veins will be quartz carbonate veins. It'll be quartz, it'll be calcite, maybe dolomite, something like that. And that will accompany the pyrite, the pyrrhotite, and the chalcopyrite, which I think are the 3 main minerals that are sulfide minerals that are present at Havieron. So the calc-silicate alteration is mostly going to be in the form of carbonate and associated quartz. That's basically what that is. There's probably a few other minerals that I off the top of my head, I probably don't know. I'm trying to think off the top of what other carbonate minerals So siderite's a good one. It might be present, which is it's the iron carbonate. You can definitely form that hydrothermally. So basically that sort of stuff and you'll in some of the core, it will be apparent as in the veins, and bordering that, you'll see potentially a sort of narrow change of color away from some of the veins in the core. That's basically what the calc-silicate alteration will be.
Right. Any thoughts on it saying limit?
That's basically the extent that they've mapped it spatially. So as we get more drilling, you'll notice that they haven't even expanded a lot of the shell out towards some of the little tails that go into the eastern
it's still blue out there, isn't it? It's
I don't
drilled
think
into
they
the
know
sea.
the full extent of the calc-silicate alteration. I think that
So that's not them saying we found the edge, is it? It's them
no,
saying
I don't
this
think
is the
we
limit
found.
of what
I
we've
still
mapped.
don't think we found the edge properly.
Well, they couldn't, because you can see the little red dots just outside it. So if
Exactly.
they said this was the limit, why is there something there, isn't it? But what I struggle to see is get my head around, and you obviously don't, but Bottle, I'm sure you do, and many of the listeners do, is looking at that figure 4 again, is how is this oriented? When I see those drill results going out to the left, I'm thinking I'm looking like a satellite picture straight down on this thing.
Yes.
And is that correct?
Yeah, this is a plan view, so you're basically viewing it from the top, and
Good.
yeah, the arrow north is just pointing in the direction of north. So yeah, we're basically viewing it.
This is the one I understand, and obviously I'm getting very excited because of this has a scale here. And
yeah, you don't have
how far out those eastern brachias are.
Where you see the A to A, that's basically the line of a cross section that they've decided to take. So that's the one that's just below. That's basically taking a horizontal slice through that and showing you essentially what they think is at depth. That's basically what that is.
Because I almost want to get some sort of measuring tool and take a measure from the sort of the top end of our southeast crescent zone when it curves around to the right, and where those 3 drills have intersected it and then continued out. Because if you put that on the scale, I mean, those from where they've started to where they end are not that much less in width than the whole southeast crescent zone. And there's only 3.
Yeah.
That's just in my layman's mind, when I'm looking down on that plan view and I'm looking at all those little tidbits, even in the southeast crescent zone itself, there's a lot that's outside of that. And of course you can see from the lines there's not a lot of drilling around outside that either. So it doesn't only support growth drilling, it supports significant, they're not just extending this 5 meters outside the previous, those look like 100 meters outside. When we put that into a volume and take it down, that's where I look at the 4.2 and think 10, 15, God, 20 possibly is possible, because that's just a lot of a volume.
If you give me a second, one of the images that I lifted, I can drop into Google Earth and we can measure it.
Yeah. If you like georeferencing images and making measurements and sort of plotting what's happening, Google Earth is good. I've started to use QGIS. I don't know if you know it. It's basically a free GIS software that basically is as good, if not, well, I think it potentially is better than ArcGIS, which is the industry standard.
Right.
And QGIS is a free software. It's open source. So basically, when
I've just saved it as a favorite. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's quite easy to use. There's loads and loads of tutorials I've been trying to teach myself on YouTube. I'm pretty sure that QGIS is used by a lot of companies to basically map where they've got their samples, the drilling locations, etc. So if you wanted a slightly different software to play around with, by all means download that. But Google Earth should do the job because they do have measuring tools already built into that.
They do. It just helps if I can find the damn file that I'm looking for to insert it. Here we go.
Yeah.
Shame you can't see my screen. Really. Are you able to see my screen? Can we share screens in Teams?
You can share. Yeah, you can. You just have to click the arrow in the top right near the leave button. So just don't click the red button. Click the little arrow that says share content.
I think that.
that one.
So if somebody has a lower ovoid, and the continuity of mineralization between Southeast Crescent and the Northern Breccia. And I mean, again, I can't get my eyes off of this figure 4. And bearing in mind, I don't think that's every single drill we've done, is it? Well, it can't be, because there's 184, 200 and something of them.
There's so many that I think there's a lot they haven't plotted because they haven't got any data back from them yet.
Yeah.
I just wish the bloody labs would hurry up. I really, really do.
It's so painful, isn't it? But then I guess you've got to think also in lines of now it is 80%. I thought it was 20%. We might get a PFS that this results, and I thought it was probably 80%. Now we know we've got 18 results outstanding. If that new lab in Australia that they talked about that was meant to be fully up running, so SD intimated that that was going to be total additional capacity. So the backlog was going to be taken up by the backlog lab, and the new assays were going to get back up to speed again from the new lab. So if that's the case, we potentially are looking at a PFS and 18 to 25 set of growth drilling holes. And I think we've got to remember, they had the 65,000 meters of growth drilling. We've seen such a small amount of that.
Yeah.
Even after we're so far behind in this curve, 6 weeks has turned into 3 months and possibly more now. I think people almost think that we've seen growth drilling this year. We haven't. We've seen the first 2 sets of results, I think, were actually infill because of the delay. So, and then you had obviously the rains and now the labs. So I think so much of that 65 drilling for 65,000 meters is still to come, and to have our first 8 to 12 to 15 holes this far outside. I mean, they're hitting discovery, like you said, Magic. They're hitting discovery hole. Great, yeah. I mean,
it's insane.
If you said to me at any point, is 133 meters at 7 grams, I'm falling off my chair in this current climate in our circumstance. It's I just wish people could separate the market dynamics from the life of something like this, and then just put that in the context of the stability of a 5,000 year strong asset like gold, even in the face of Bitcoin, which I'm also heavily involved in. This is it's just pure patience. I wish I could just sit and grab anybody who's taken a risk on this company and just say, I've done this myself. I've guaranteed loads of my family and friends investments, which is a crazy thing to do, but that's the level of confidence I have.
Mm-hmm.
And I never had that. I hoped that 3 years ago, even after the discovery holes, I hoped, and I've now reached the point where I went all in today, and I'm so glad I did, because I've never been clearer with it in my mind. We'll never find another share like this, with PIs willing to give selflessly to share their knowledge on all sorts of technical subjects. I work. My job every day is pulling together smart minds and getting to the right answer. And it's like Einstein says, never memorize something that you can look up. And that is one thing I'm good at, and as an investor you need to be good at. You need to find a network, find the right people to listen to. Don't listen to the rampers on Twitter. Don't report or block the guys on LSE that are causing trouble. Get in the Telegram group, get involved, listen to these podcasts, because all the cliches are true here. Time in the market, not timing it.
As an aside to that, for example, not many people did do this. There were some, but when I did the presentations, I have got my email on there. If you have geology questions and you have questions about kind of what implications does this drill have, or that, I these podcasts are great to answer that. But if you want to email the Magic Trades email, I will endeavour to get back to you. And because I like talking about this, and I like talking about the deposit. I like talking about how it forms, all these things, and sometimes I don't really go on the LSE board too much anymore, mainly through time, but also I have seen a lot of nonsense on there.
It's been awful, hasn't it? It's so sad.
I just think
really.
to myself, I don't really want the hassle of having to deal with some absolute moron just trying to call out anything that I'm saying. Because I know what I'm saying, especially with regards to the science, is based on scientific fact.
Exactly.
So I just don't want to have to get into any sort of match. Luckily, I haven't had to, because most people have been very, very respectful. So
sorry, I'm just going to send it off to North, because I no doubt he has questions as he wants to correlate his data. Is it magictrades@gmail.com?
Yes, magictrace212@gmail.com.
Oh, 212.
I'll just read something from North here as well. He said, in an AEM, ferromagnetic material is responsible for most of the message responses. And it goes in order of diametric. God, there's so many big names here. Maybe you should read this, Magic.
Diamagnetic, paramagnetic, and ferromagnetic.
Excuse me.
So basically saying like the magnetite family is responsible for most, and then pyrrhotite is kind of like the second biggest contributor. So yeah, and that basically explains really why we have this mag anomaly at Havieron. So that's good information, North. I've yet to listen to your bloody podcast with Liam, and I feel really bad. So I'm gonna do that tomorrow when I'm working. So yeah.
Very, very much well worth it.
I've heard it's good, and so yeah, I'll definitely get on that. Also, it might be a good idea actually, North, if you're listening still. If you emailed that, you asked a question about IOCGs, which I did see, and I was going to talk about, but I think we've been talking about so much tonight. I'm more than I'll see if I can send you some stuff about that, because I think it's a good question. And yeah, basically like the IOCG stuff, which was the original hypothesis for this area, I think. I think whilst it's not completely impossible that you get an IOCG in this area, I think the general model of it, these being intrusion-related gold deposits, probably holds true for at least, I would say, a radius of around, I don't know, probably from Telfer to Havieron, then draw like a circumference of whatever that distance is. I would be shocked. I think like with IOCGs, it's like, first of all, people don't really know what they are. I should probably get that out there right now. The science community is still researching them extensively because they don't really have a model for their formation. They're very enigmatic. But I think the major difference between our deposits and an IOCG is kind of twofold. One is essentially the abundance of iron oxides for a start. Like we don't really have that much in Havieron, and also we don't really see that much in the other deposits. Whereas when you go to look at Olympic Dam or even the ones in Chile, there is so much magnetite and so much hematite associated with the ores there. That's really where the iron oxide component comes from. And the other thing is the granite type and the fluids that produces is different for an IOCG than here, the looks of it. The granites in an IOCG are what we call anorogenic or anhydrous granites, which basically form from what it kind of says on the tin, lack of water, whereas these granites in the Patterson are all I-type granites, which are igneous type, and they basically produce different fluids. By the looks of it, that's based on the reading I've kind of done, and I'm pretty sure I would be shocked in my previous presentation if I didn't at least go over some of the characteristics of IOCGV versus intrusion-related gold. So
I think you did. I think you had all.
Yeah, I think if the answer isn't in there, there is a number of papers if you do Google Scholar. Some of them are open access, some of them require a subscription, which as part of the uni, I pretty much have access to those, so I can send you the copies. But and this is a shameless plug, I've helped to run a online geoscience platform called Ore Deposits Hub on YouTube, and we've had a bunch of academics, world-leading academics, talk about IOCGs on that platform. They are very, very science-heavy talks. So it is probably, if you are a geologist, you'll definitely get more out of them and you'll understand them better. But even the intros of some of those talks, it basically introduces what an IOCG is from that person's perspective. So you can kind of look at those if you really want to, as really like quite high level. But yeah, anyway, the bottom line is I would consider Goliath, etc., at this stage still an intrusion-related gold system. That's my thinking at the moment, until I see like major differences in the chemistry or the core.
Well, as you can both see, I'm struggling to get this damn thing matched up. They do take some time sometimes to get these graphics into place. I'm sure the people on YouTube are having a whale of a time watching me faffing around something chronic. There's a 5 minute.
Can they see you now?
There's a 5 minute delay on the feed. No, they're just watching my Google Earth.
Oh, are they?
5 minute feed delay, they say, yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I not sure I'm going to get this lined up in time, so we might have to look at that question tomorrow.
Yeah,
I
I
wonder.
might be on LSE a bit more tomorrow, just because ultimately it's release day and it's always going to be fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
We'll see.
Why don't we end?
Go on.
Sorry. I was going to say when we end off, let's end off with a little SP prediction for all of us, just for fun, because I know Bottle's cynical as hell, so he's gonna say we're going down.
Oh man, yeah, we've got to. If I tell you what, Stu, I'm
It's
that
tradition,
confident.
isn't it?
I'm that confident we're going down that I am going to buy some shares tomorrow to make sure we do go down, so that I'm still right.
I am going to say, right. So my head says we're going down because it's tradition, and I think some people might look at this and go, "Oh, we've only got X amount of holes,
18 holes,
whatever."
They'd have to be pretty novice. They'd have to be pretty novice at this stage to read all that language and and think the holes matter.
Yeah. But then my heart says it could go up. Now, for me, if we're speaking strictly on the share price, like there is a lot of overhang, or at least there's a lot of resistance at around 19.5, 20. If it was to break that though, the share price at that point, I think, really is starting to look at reversal territory. So at that point, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of traders and a lot of other people who are waiting in the wings would get in, because I think they would have they basically in their heads would have a support level that they could essentially base their stop loss on. And I think the run to 25s over time is certainly on the cards. Hopefully back towards 30 if you really consider
by the end of the year, surely.
Yeah, I think you've got so much news. You've got PFS, you've got a mineral resource upgrade, you've got more jury results coming. There's so much to look forward to. So
yeah, I think I'm 50-50 for probably the first time in a long time, and I've never been one other than unscally to act on the results, and I've, as you guys know, been here since the beginning, and it's been horrible to watch. It's to retrace for 2 weeks after results every time, and I almost always bought after results every time, which turned into great buys now, of course, in hindsight, which is why I say, time in the market.
Exactly.
But it's quite. I genuinely think there's the chance for the normal reaction. In other words, in the first 15 minutes, we'll see between 5 to 8% increase, whilst a few people buy in and realize what this actually is. And you'll see the guys who bought in the last 3 or 4 days hoping to get a quick spike and take 5 or 10%, you'll see them leave. So I think you'll get that 5 to 8% quite early on, within the first 15 minutes. And then I think this is my 50% scenario, then I think you might see us basically stay where we were today, 1880 to 1920, stay flat, and the market goes, no, we're waiting for the bumper results next time around, all of those holes and the PFS. I think that there's maybe a chance that we move from 50-50 into 60-40 in favor of your reversal scenario, Magic. And I know that's a bit of hopium, but I'm also quite cynical. I've been here long enough
I'm the same.
To know that, I'm not going to say we're mooning tomorrow, but I do think your scenario is plausible because of the kicker of GH buying back in. 10 million shares is very clear in my mind, at least, that's his holding bag. I agree with the comments we had in the chat saying, but he could just carry on buying and selling, and of course he could. But I think that's a little.
He's not a trader, though. He's not
really, and I think that's the little bit of extra information a lot of PIs need. It's a question answered whilst this story continues, whilst we're still open at depth, whilst grades are increasing, whilst everything's tier one that we set our eyes upon, and the perfect storm is brewing. So I think there's a chance that after the initial shenanigans in the first half hour that we might start moving up significantly, and if we like you say, I think if we break the 20p area, which is where the traders who bought in the last couple of weeks might well sell for their 5 or 10%, I think then you could move quite quickly to 22.5, 23.
I agree, and I think I definitely have my ideas about where I'd want to buy it. I mean, certainly from a trading perspective, it would make absolute sense if it broke out of 20p. It then becomes a bit of a momentum trade, to be honest.
Yeah.
There's that's a sensible thing to do. I mean, we'll have to wait and see. If it was to drop extensively, sell on news type thing, I think I'd have to see what I can do with my stipend because I just don't see any fundamental reasons here anymore, and I haven't seen them for a while. I think the Gervais thing you talked about earlier, going below 10 million, some of the results from Galley
just gave you a little bit of a
if you're being really picky, picky,
it gave me a little bit of am I right? As this last 7 years of one investment and full time research, have I been wrong? Or that was the one thing that made me think he is an insider. So what does he know?
Yes.
And now for him to have upped that back to 10 million, for me, it's hugely significant because it just shows, for me, it answers that question.
I think fundamentals now are like, they're a screaming buy, and they have been for a long time. I think the only reason why I was ever and it's just through checking day-to-day prices that you get in this headspace.
It is.
It's going down. Oh, it's in a downtrend.
Exactly.
And you start being silly with yourself and going, oh, I might sell, but what the story here, and we know the fundamentals. And you mentioned the Lassonde curve. I think when you look at that, you really do see where we are in that curve. And once you make that realization, you realize this is a fantastic value proposition at this point.
I think you've also got to think about the psychology behind the Lassonde curve and why we as PIs need to be in now at these lows where it doesn't feel like it's paying off. And even so, a lot of us having endured a drop and probably looking at negative numbers. The institutions don't need to do that. Remember, they're in it for less with more money.
Yes, exactly.
Just remember that anyone looking at this who's an analyst who's following this knows that we're going to hit first production in quite a while. So they can either wait for a technical breakout, they can wait for anything, and they're after 50%, maybe a lot more than that, less than we are. So we need to be we need patient. We need to wait out until those institutions go, all right, I'm going to throw my 100 million at this because it's now going to be producing gold. Here's the numbers. I know exactly what it is, and I'm moving forward. So once you have the asset, you just have to wait for that wall of money to hit. That's really where we are now, and we as PIs need to be involved because you don't know when it hits. I've looked at a lot of PFSs and share price graphs, and sometimes it's within 3 months of production. Sometimes it's 9 months out. You just don't know. Sometimes it's on PFS, sometimes it's on DFS. I think, for people listening and still wondering, this is what it's about, and forget about the price now. It happens every time on a big deposit. The institutions arrive later, and there's 2 re-rates. It's when you have your discovery and you prove out this ore body. We've had that re-rate and the retrace, and now you're going to get that second one, and it's bigger than the first, guys. So hold on to your shares past 30p if you've got 3 years
Massively,
to wait.
So yeah, it's great. It's great advice. It really is.
Yeah,
I love it. I think what you'll see, I've been sitting here wondering a couple of things, and I've always said this. He may have left the company, but did they choose to leave him from the WhatsApp group? You can't tell me Greatland Gold doesn't have a Greatland Gold WhatsApp group. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, did he leave on bad terms? I mean, that is possible. We don't know. It's not really for us to speculate. Is he still part of that WhatsApp group? We don't know. It comes down to how pally they are and whatnot. Again, we don't know. We can only speculate. But sorry, a message just popped up. But so is that why he knows? We obviously we don't know. We can't speculate. But I'm still in contact with my old friends from work, so why not? It's feasible. Anyway, the other thing I thought was that what's to stop someone looking at this tomorrow? Someone in a big bloody leather chair with a massive desk and, an assistant reading this and going, this is silly. Why are we waiting for the PFS?
I mean, if you were looking at diagram 4, would that not be your summation?
Do you know what I mean? Why are
you're going, there's enough there, and there's definitely, I mean, don't stop talking to me about growth potential.
Yeah.
Why? Look at the diagram.
Why do you wait for the PFS and another 30p when you can just, let's just get in now. This is clearly going to happen. This is clearly going to be an institutional
I think if you're going to, Yeah, because by the time the institutions have got in, you're too late.
You're way too late. Or you can play their game.
I guess we don't know what his game will be.
The quick move that's going to have doubled or tripled your money. And if you're in gold exploration for anything less than double or triple your money, then I think you need to go back to basics.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, then tomorrow I predict a share price of 38p.
Well, remember last time I was quite clear. I said we're probably going to go down, in the podcast, and we did. And I just think I do think this time's different because we're supported by such a news-rich period of actual key milestones this time, not just 6-week drill results, key milestones in the mining cycle. That's significant. It's not our 6-week updates. It's not going to be about how many holes. We're going to be dissecting the economics here and working out discounted cash flows, and it's really then going to start making a lot of sense and more. And that's when the re-rate happens, when the moment we move away from that 50% risk to a 75 or a 0 or whatever the case may be.
I mean, this is it now. This is the time. If there was ever going to be a ramp
can wait.
brigade, this is the time for ramping.
It is, but it's true, and it's borne out by this deposit, which even now is exceeding my wildest dreams. This is the first diagram I've looked at, and I've gone, I'm 50-50. This could be 20 million, and I've never allowed myself to entertain that thought. I've never allowed myself to go above 10 million in any assumption, because I just think that's ridiculous. It's so implausible given recent history. But that's how I feel about the results. Very happy.
What is a calcite alteration?
Calcite?
Calcite.
Calc-silicate.
It's on Fig 4.
Yeah, calc-silicate. We talked about it. It's essentially
sorry.
When you I'll summarize briefly then what I said earlier. You may have to watch again, but obviously when you react to a fluid with wall rock, you're going to precipitate new minerals, or you're going to essentially and that's what alteration is.
Fair enough.
In the terms of calc-silicate, because we're dealing with carbonate rocks, you're going to react the carbonate. You're going to essentially reprecipitate new carbonate minerals because you've got a lot of calcium, but also the fluid might contain iron and other things. So you will form slightly different carbonates potentially to just calcite. You might get something called siderite there. You might get dolomite. And then the silicate part is, when you think of silicate, just think quartz, because that is the main mineral that forms from silicate-rich fluids.
Interesting. I wouldn't have made that connection, just because as a layman, I'm seeing the word silicate and thinking silicon.
Yeah, so quartz is chemistry. Quartz, if you want the quartz's formula is SiO2. And that is what silicate is. Whenever you see, you probably will never see these, but in my world, we always have SiO2% plotted against some other metric, especially when it comes to volcanic rocks. It's how we basically characterize volcanic rocks, basically geochemically. There's little thresholds. So once you get above, like, for example, the diorite is normally anywhere from 53 to about 56, 57 weight percent silica, something like that. But so calc-silicate alteration is the main type. I wouldn't be shocked if we have other things sort of chucked in there in and around the veins. Normally you get, especially at other ore deposit types, like, for example, porphyries, you'll get potassic alteration. Things like that, but anyway, doesn't really matter about that. That's not on the figure.
No, it's all good. I'm loving the £1 share predictions. They're coming back again. It's funny how people as you go through the news cycle, you get those that are like, oh yeah, this will be £1, this will be £1. Then as news fades away and it becomes distant memory, oh no, this will be 65p.
Well, I think anyone who was in Sirius in the £1 party, I think that's put us all off of just that figure. I don't like the number 1 anymore.
No.
But I think that's why I put some context around it. I think whilst £1 is ridiculous, it's essentially a 5x from here, and 5x re-rate on just a 20-minute discovery from where we are now with the economics we have genuinely is not unrealistic. And in a 5-year time frame, we're looking at already having huge cash revenue to have drilled out all our other licenses and possibly found that second ore body. But then we're also into the block cave, quite quickly at the end of that. So we're going to be doubling down on that, and then we'll probably be the exclusive or going into Telfer, I hope, or maybe with some of our neighbours as well, just to share the fun. But I genuinely, this is the first time I think that's not unrealistic, £1, but it must be over 5 years. This isn't a fast thing. We all know that.
Yeah.
If it spikes anywhere near £1 in the next 6 months, I'll be selling everything. I tell you that.
Yeah. So Choddy, I think he's just saying a little while ago that I want to know what the AISC will be. That's the key. I definitely think that's one component. Like when it comes to us producing, not necessarily the pre-feasibility study, but you can do a definitive feasibility study. Bankable feasibility. So that's really when that gets important, because that's basically saying, okay, we believe this is essentially the break-even rate, if you like. We want that to be as low as possible. I think a lot of the broker notes have it quite high, so probably erring on the side of caution.
What's that, the all-in sustaining cost?
Yeah, I think as we get more data, that will start to come down a little bit.
What I don't understand is I know there's a massive end discount in block cave versus stoping. The all-in sustaining cost is much cheaper for block cave, but of course the infrastructure and the time cost getting there, so therefore the discounted cash flow is affected. But to me the biggest factor is the Cadia factor. It's the copper. I'm keeping a close look on those, because I used to think the biggest factor was the depth of the ore body, and I think that's way out. By far and away.
The technology's there now to get down. Obviously, it will cost you more to get down further. That goes without saying. But I think you're right. I don't think that's now no longer really the major concern. I think byproducts, things like obviously the copper's the main one. Is a way in which you can really lower that AISC. I think having a vertical ore body really helps with that. We've already got infrastructure locally. There's a lot of things that I think definitely play to our advantage for sure.
They just need to stop building that second decline now.
Yeah. That's it.
Well, I'm glad they haven't, because it's going to have to be a long way to the east, isn't it?
It's going to be much smaller though, isn't it?
I know there's going to be one on each side.
You've got that. Sorry, there's. I was looking at satellite data. There's a pad appeared to the south of the camp.
Oh, hello.
And it's where Bamps said he would put. If it was Bamps and Bamps was doing all the design work and all the rest of it, that's roughly where we'd put it. And it wouldn't be a very big decline, because it would only contain the conveyors that would shift the rock out.
Got you. And so because that's something I haven't followed enough, and it's usually more talked about on LSE, but is that the consensus that this is ultimately going to be pulled out by a conveyor rather than track?
He basically said you've got to look at Cadia. If you look at Cadia's got one that zigzags. And it can, because it's just a conveyor, it can be fairly steep as well. So it doesn't need to be as big as the one that we've got. So, but I think they need to do a few things first before that can work. But no, there's a draw pad to the south of the camp. At least that's what it looks like. So hopefully we'll start seeing that getting drilled out soon.
That's brilliant.
For testing, I'm making that. The thought that's not, I nearly said assumption then. I'm making the thought that there's probably not much in the way of anything worth looking at there. So it's more of what's down there. Do you know what I mean? Like, they need to know what's down there, don't they, before they can start making that kind of plan.
Okay, so now I'm going to get really rampy. Magic, like we've seen, I don't know to scale what the difference is to the Zepa and the Apollo targets, but in geological terms, has there been a deposit? Are we talking like maybe Kalgoorlie or whatever? Is it possible that really this ovoid we're looking at is literally just the area we've drilled, and we just keep going out and out and out and out all the way to the Zebra and Apollo targets? Is that possible, or is that stretching it? Those are more likely to be different zones, different ore bodies.
You're looking at
I'd
2
say
clicks.
more likely to be different ore bodies, only because I think for it to be continuous all the way out to that extent, I actually don't know what the distance is.
2
I suppose you
kilometers.
wouldn't have had the bullseye magnetic anomaly. You wouldn't have had all the other pathfinders that sort of got us to this.
I think there's been a lot of talk, even on LinkedIn as well. Like, there's potential for like these. It's like camp style mineralization,
Yes.
right? That's certainly more common with, for example, VMS type deposits, which you get in the Yilgarn. I don't know many. I don't know actually really know too many examples of camp in terms of intrusion related, but I think I did give one that was in Canada in one of my presentations, and that I think is actually a camp, because they call it the Malarctic district, but you have multiple ore bodies basically structurally controlled along essentially a shear zone there. So I remember making a comparison and felt like there was some similarities between that area and also the Patterson. So I don't think it's completely out of reach to say that those targets would end up potentially being, satellite sort of deposits to a main sort of camp. I don't know about like if you was to somehow stretch the entire ovoid and like encompass all of that. I would imagine that there are going to be gaps, like barren gaps, in the deposit, even in Havieron. I think a good, even though it's not really barren at all, but you do see summer holes that have drilled the northern breccia come up with much lower grades. And they're just going to be zones which just for some reason, probably some sort of rock property, just don't have the concentration of gold or copper in comparison to other zones. You see this even in in my area, like where I actually study for the PhD. There's barren gaps that separate different ore deposits along Zambia. So I wouldn't be shocked if basically you have Havieron, and then further north you have the Apollo, and is it Parlay? I forget.
Can you still see my screen?
I can't see your screen, but I haven't been able to see it for ages. I think you're on a different monitor or something. But either way, the point being that you've got these satellite deposits, which ultimately you would call, say, in the future, the Havieron district, rather than just the Havieron deposit, and that would encompass like maybe the satellite things. If we're being really rampy, this is
I like it. I like it.
But yes. I mean, I don't think you can rule it out for sure.
That's brilliant. It's brilliant. And so, but are we recording this? Are you posting it later? Or is it just live?
It's live. YouTube should actually capture it for me. So
yeah, YouTube will capture it.
Oh, got you. Okay, cool.
So you can choose to basically keep it up or not.
just while you're there, and just to measure it, from roughly the center to the new drill that's gone in is 1.2 miles. Actually, if I bring up the one of these will give me a lovely little picture. I never remember which blinking picture does what. It's not the main plan. That one? No, that one doesn't look right either. Oh my word, it's not the AEM, definitely not. Artemis, definitely not that one. March 21, that'll do. So if you go from the very tip of the Northwest Crescent as it was in March 2021, it is a mile to the new drill target.
Okay, that's not very far, is it? That's like 5 kilometers. No. How
Say that again, yeah?
It's a mile. Or if you want it in kilometers, it is 1.91.
Yeah, 1.91, so nearly 2 kilometers. I mean, that's not that far.
Yeah, 1.6 to
Yeah,
1.9.
you get deposits that are like 5-10 kilometers away from and get considered part of the same district. So it's yeah.
Does this mean you're letting my RAM stand?
Well, I mean, I think it's still quite a little bit of a distance, but I mean, it's certainly not impossible. I don't think
That's all I'm looking for. Not
it's
impossible.
not impossible because I mean
that's some hopium right there. I like that. I like that. Not impossible.
because I think what they'll get is if they kept drilling in that direction. I think what's the ovoid shape now at? It is nearly at a sort of kilometer length, isn't it? Really, like in terms of dimensions, you've got like they always talk about it being 650 by this and that. So, I think there would be a barren zone, and I reckon that would separate any sort of continuous, and I think that may be just because of local sort of depletion, but
infrastructure wise,
we know that we know this is a although it doesn't get talked about at all in any of these sort of publications that we do we look at, but it seems quite apparent that there is structure in this basin. Like you're going to have faults, and I think you can separate all deposits by faults sometimes. So yeah, I think it's not totally impossible. I just think it's improbable it'd be a continuous. But I definitely think personally like there is I think there's camp scale potential because I think a lot of the geophysical responses that we get from some of these other targets are very similar. We need the drill data to confirm. I mean, when we go back to the jury stuff, when I said that I was quite happy, I was particularly happy with Black Hills. I thought the Black Hills data was great. I think Goliath's it's kind of just a start for sure. Like it was better than the Scallywag. 100%.
And I don't know if you've been back on Black Hills, but I mean, we picked up some really strong rock chip samplings. That it sent the share price flying way back when, and then yes, the second sort of drill program wasn't amazing, but those there's gold there. We've got just a matter of finding it. Yeah. And what I love is also just thinking back now again, just sorry for the nostalgia, but just trying to pick out some of the things that Gervais or Callum or people have said in their interviews. And the two things that stand out for me are the two phrases that have been given to us a long time ago that now make very much sense is we're just scratching the surface. So just look at these deep anomalies. And the other one is that deposits like this just keep giving.
They do.
They do. Those two things, if you've been in the share for a few years, just keep remembering those, because if you look at the life cycle of investing in a mining company, those two phrases are bearing out to be very true. And I think we're still at the beginning here, which is just awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a great example of that, and it's actually at the end of the Antipa presentation. They talk about Telfer and a bit of the history behind that. And there was various zones of that deposit they didn't discover until much later on. And I'm just looking at it now because they discovered it in 1972. That's a long time ago. But the Telfer's June 2000 underground mineral resource was 3.5 million tons at 13.8 gram per ton gold for 1.5 million ounces gold. That was in 2000, but the actual total production since 1972 has been over 14 million ounces for that. So multiples of that 1.5 million ounce find in underground resource.
And that's extracted all, like the overall reserve is 27 million ounces.
Yeah, it's something stupid. It's and the thing was that was built over time, like and them discovering further reef zones at depth that enabled them to do underground, because originally it was an open pit.
And it was certainly not fast tracked, was it?
No, it wasn't. And the thing with it as well, I know it's in a structure that's like it's a double plunging anticline structure, which I'm pretty sure they've mined. They had the if I go back, if I think about the history that I've read, I think there's a very, very good page online, and well, it's very, very technical, but it's written by a consultant geologist. It's called Porterhouse Geo. I think he has pretty much all of the details on Telfer. I'm pretty sure it says about the fact that they discovered it in outcrop, obviously developed the open pit on one side underground, but then the other because it's a double anticline, they then made a discovery in the other anticline. So it just goes to show you that, you know, as it progresses, you start to see new zones crop up. The thing with Newcrest in our campaign is we're kind of identifying a lot of the zones early on, where we're not just going, oh look, we've got the high grade sulfide, it's this much ounces, let's go and get it out.
Well, you see, I'm almost of the opposing view there, Magic, only in the sense that we have a unique set of circumstances where they need to get all 100% as quick as possible to Telfer. So I think Newcrest's normal approach, and I don't speak from experience knowing what the normal approach is, but you know, normally when you're trying to get, you want to get that MRE as big as humanly possible. So normally when they focus so much on infill here, that it feels like the growth drilling was so secondary. It feels like there's more potential to discover new zones, like they said, or we've now got a new target. We've now got a new target. I think in a normal drilling campaign, if they didn't need this all ASAP like they do, they may have looked for those other targets before the infill. They may have done bigger spacing and
I think
found the edges. You know what I mean?
I think that's more correct. I just think in comparison to how this was done, where they ended up discovering, and it actually could end up doing this anyway with Havieron. As you get further down at depth, you start to know more about what's happening at depth rather than just, you know, several drill holes that go down. Because once you're down there, you're going to have way, way, way more kind of knowledge about what's down there, right? So
that's interesting. Does anybody know? Do you know how much better, quicker are drilling from down the decline is? Because that's one thing that's always gotten me. It's quite obvious that this was always going to be a decline that would be used for mining, but it has always been labelled as the exploration decline, not the mining portal until recently. So I don't know enough about. I guess it's obvious that if they 500 meters closer to the ore body, they're going to be able to drill it faster. And probably more targeted, I suppose, but also in my mind's eye, more laterally. You know, they're going to be able to take more wedges in much different directions from where they are getting through the 500 first. So that's also the other side.
I think they are going to establish early on, like, I think it's this, you know, significant. I think the updated mineral resource estimate will be more. I think they're definitely they're going to do their damn hardest to get that as far over that 5 million ounce sort of tier 1 threshold as they can get, and within like reason. And once they've got that, I think at that point, you know, that's many multiples of what they got here for, you know, Telfer in 2000. So they'll just go, okay, right, that's what we got. And then over the multiple years that the miner will operate, they will 100% be able to add on extra to that.
Because I think you make a good point, and it's something that's maybe just the pennies dropped a little bit for me right now, is we need to separate the fact that when we exploration investors, we're looking at that top line figure. It's a bit like when I work, it's a top line and profit of two very, very, very different things. And when you're looking at, you know, how big can this get, that's where the speculative element lies. That's where we're all sitting here going, wow, this could be 20 million ounces. That could be amazing. But as you've just mentioned, Telfer hasn't withdrawn 27 million ounces. And if it had died a death in 2 years' time, it would never have got to 27 million ounces. So what's more important now, I think, when we flip into feasibility and so on and so forth, is our valuation is going to move from where we've all been going, how much is 20 million ounce deposit worth if we find that big. We're actually, I don't think, going to know that for a very, very, very long time. But it's actually not going to matter, because that's not what we're going to be valued on. We're now going to move into the value of economics. And that's where I think this stoping and the high grade element just helps so much, because we could have this 25 million ounce deposit, but over 30 years with discounted cash flow, that may not give us the share price and market cap targets we're hopeful for. But I'm comforted by the fact that I actually don't care whether it's 10, 15 or 20, because it's that first 5, and in the next 10 years, that's what they'll be mining. That's what our valuation over the next 5 years is going to be based on.
Yeah, 100%. Completely agree with that.
It's just comforting to know that because I've been quite fixated on that 10 million ounce, 50 million ounce number, and the more you realize that you're probably not going to know that figure for at least a few years. I'm quite comforted by the fact that you probably don't need to know that figure. That's normal. It's normal that you just keep finding and keep looking, and just like KD have, and the other ones. So yeah, I think that's something that's dropped for me a bit tonight. Is it's the strength of the grade and the continuity of the ore and how quickly we can get it out. That's going to make those annual revenue figures. That's going to feed through to our discounted cash flow. Not that hope for 27 million ounce or 20 million ounce. That top line figure is going to fall away for in the next few years.
Yeah, no, I think that's the main. I think it's good that to get that ideas through your head for sure, because it is a matter. It's a time thing as much as it is a sort of, I guess, quantity thing with these numbers. It's a function of time, how big they can get and how much we can get out, and all these other factors.
And it's that economic viability, isn't it? They don't, from Newco's point of view, they don't need to know if it's a 5 million deposit. They just need to know how much ore they can be taking to Telfer immediately, within the next 2 years, and then they'll go and explore how much they can for the next 25.
Yeah.
That's cool. I better leave it there, guys. I've got to be up at 6, and then I've got a dentist appointment at 9, so that's going to be quite enjoyable. But
I'm sorry to hear that. I was going to say, been going for 2.5 hours now. Probably a good time to wrap up and stuff. So thank you both very much for joining me this evening. I was thinking out loud, maybe what we need to do is host a Zoom party. Because everyone can just tune into Zoom, and I believe that will be a lot easier than me trying to stream. Zoom can do it all for me without me having to link cameras and blah blah blah. So maybe.
How many people can you have?
Well, if you pay for it, which I'm not too offended to do for the month, you can have about 1,000.
Yeah, you get a lot of people. Yeah.
So you know what you do? It's first come, first serve.
Idea.
First come, first serve. Charge £1, and quid for entry fee, and then we can split it. Just give something to charity.
I think that's a great idea, because we might be able to, in the chat, allow certain people to speak whose opinions we value, and that just brings everybody into this.
Yeah, it's what you do. You basically have a chat box, and people can put questions, but you can set up the meeting to the point where you've got people muted, and you can basically unmute them,
bring them in as you need.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we do next time, because that's going to it's going to make things a lot simpler, isn't it? Because I'm not plugged into OBS, and then OBS is plugged into Zoom, and I'm trying to faff around with screens. I can just share a screen when I need to, if I want to, and Zoom.
Can you record it so you can post that on YouTube later?
Zoom will do it all for me. It will do it all offline.
Oh, brilliant.
They can record it. So we'll look at that for next time. And as our producer that's not there, that keeps popping up, has just said, what about Telegram? Yeah, we can do live in Telegram, but I'm not quite sure what the screen sharing's like. So I'll look into that. I'm pretty sure you can screen share, but I don't know about being able to share other people, but I will look into it and maybe do some live streams on Telegram over the next month anyway. In fact, when the PFFS comes out, I might do just a straight live Telegram. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Stuart, have you got any final words for everybody?
Just a heartfelt thanks to the two of you, really. I'm just a private investor. There's not as nearly as much work from myself that goes in with you guys, and I like to hope I bring some insight, just having been here for a while and having made a success of GGP. But just hang in there, guys. This is such an incredible opportunity. I've been up and down with the share for 7 years, and it's totally and utterly transformed my life financially. And I just think, stick with the safe things follow the macro cycles. This is totally unique to have this sort of information, and information's power, information's key. That's even if you're not looking at the ore deposit and don't understand all of this stuff. Tell me another share. You've got a Telegram group, a satellite, long-term PIs who give as much as they do to help you understand. I think that in itself is a reason to invest. So yeah, good luck everyone. Who cares what happens tomorrow? My prediction is we're going to get to 20p, but let's see. I'm going positive against my better judgment. I'm going against my better judgment. I'm thinking the GH news and the fact that those are proper growth drilling holes should be enough for anyone who's been sat on the sidelines to go, come on, man. The next one is clearly going to be the bumper set of results, almost certainly timed with the PFS right before the resource upgrade. I mean, you just can't not be in this at these levels, in my opinion, if you've ever had an interest in this company.
Totally. Magic, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you mega busy these days, and so I really, really appreciate the time that you have taken to be with us this evening.
Likewise, there's been
no worries, guys. It's all good. I enjoy it. So
hopefully you'll join us on the next one.
Oh yeah,
we might have to make this a tradition. It worked well.
I probably wouldn't turn it down. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
That's great.
At least people know we aren't selling out. Hey, otherwise we wouldn't be wanting to do all this, would we?
No, I definitely wouldn't stay up to 2 a.m. doing it. So
the BAMPS is well overdue a podcast, so you can expect a podcast very, very soon. Guys, I know there's still some of you sat out there in YouTube not painfully, but just still here, still listening. I wonder how many of them have fallen asleep while we're still there. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, listening, being here, putting up with the technical difficulties. Thank you very much. My name's Liam, and you've been watching GGPHelp TV with our September results for Greatland Gold. Thank you, and a very good night to you. And I best remember how to turn this thing off, otherwise it's never going to stop streaming.
Good night, all. Good night.
Night.
Looking forward to tomorrow. Cheers, boys.